And so everyone's like, this is a bad idea. The moment you self-publish, you're just locking the doors and no one is going to take you seriously. And I thought that's fine because no one is taking me seriously anyway.
So I wanted to start with a crazy statistic that I read, which was a study that was done in 2015, which said that 6.7% of Americans had only read one poem in the last year. And it just kind of occurred to me that someone reading one of your poems on Instagram could mark the advent of their first interaction with a poem, which is kind of amazing and incredible. So congratulations on everything that you've done, and you are just about to embark on this huge American tour. And how does that feel?
It feels amazing, and I'm really grateful, and I feel really blessed. I think it's like always it's difficult to answer that question, because for me and my life, poetry's always just been such a consistent part of it.
Yeah.
And so now everybody's like, oh my God, poetry is like everywhere. It's this crazy thing. And I haven't been able to really see that shift because it's always been around me. But I think it's so important. And I think it's important because poetry allows you to process emotion and allows you to express it. And it's crazy that such a low percentage of people actually use it as a tool to heal and as a tool to share. And so I think it's great that we're in a time now where so many more people are reading and using it.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. That was really how I felt reading your book, that it was just incredibly healing. And also, I loved it as a shorthand for ideas that I found really difficult to express myself. I could refer someone to this poem. I could just send them a screenshot of something, and I felt so lucky to have that as a tool in my arsenal that I could kind of draw on and be like, this is what it feels like, here. So that's incredible. You're giving people more words, more language. It's incredible.
Thank you.
You're a poet in, the day and age of, you post something on your Instagram account and you get instant feedback. So most writers will put a book out into the world, and maybe they'll read a review, or maybe they'll meet someone that's read their work that has an opinion, but you have to come face to face with people's responses and feelings to your work on a daily basis in drones. And I'm curious, does that affect your writing? Does that affect?
Yeah, it does two things. The feedback's always reassuring in that, oh, there's people here that want to read this, I'll keep writing it. But I'm also very self-aware of the fact that I don't want what other people think to change how I write and what I write about. And I remember very early on, this was probably, Milk and Honey was first self-published and at the end of 2014. And when it came out, all of my friends were like, okay, so we were like taking a look at your Instagram and we realized that the poems about love and heartbreak get the most amount of love. And your other pieces about like sexual abuse and all that, okay, maybe you want to like chill on those because there's not that much interaction. And I remember for a month, I was like, you're right. I should be doing everything that I can to get this book into as many hands as possible. But it didn't feel right. And what I felt was this magic. There was some sort of magic going away. And I realized it was because writing for me, and I explain it as like a romantic relationship with like a partner. It is a romantic relationship. It's like this spiritual connection that I have. And it's when I feel closest to myself. And you wouldn't let a third party enter your romantic relationship, and their opinions shouldn't affect how you feel about the person that you love. So why would I let hundreds and thousands of people and their opinions affect how I write and what I write about? And so I'm very aware of really letting that feedback change. So I'm very like, okay, I don't read reviews, and I hardly read comments. And that's usually how I do it. I think it's about honesty and just sharing that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's such a good analogy. And I mean, I relate. I think the self-discipline it takes to not allow a third-party opinion into your psyche and your creative space is key. it's hard when it's about you. It must be really hard.
It's so personal.
It's so personal.
Everybody around me is like, it's okay. Like, you know, this person isn't criticizing you. They're just criticizing the work. And I'm like, but the poetry is literally me.
Yeah.
Like, how is it not about me? You
Yeah.
know, this is poems about my life, poems about my experiences and the people that I love. So it's very difficult. And even though I am so self-aware and I do try to, like, you know, not let it affect me, I'm sure that at a level it has affected, you know, the way that I write.
Yeah.
And that has, for sure, some part of it has gone into like how I've written the second book.
Yeah. Well, that's what's so beautiful. And one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about was how incredibly there's a lack of self-consciousness there that's so beautiful. There's like such an innocence and like a purity to the way that you did that. And how old were you when you posted the now really famous picture of you with menstrual blood on a sheet?
I think I was 22 or 23.
That's amazing to me because I remember, I mean, I had more confidence at that age, but
me too.
But I still, I wonder, it was so fearless. It was so brave. And
I had no idea what, I agree with you. I was so much more confident and so much more raw, and I just didn't care about anyone and anything. And I was like, I'm going to do what I want, how I want to do it. And it was a good thing, but it allowed me to get into some trouble with that photograph. And, you know, I was very naive about the internet because I'd written about periods before. There's a poem about them in Milk and Honey. And so I thought that this photograph wouldn't be a big deal. It was a part of a school project and, you know, the class loved it and it was going well. And so I thought, it's fine. Like, my readers know that this is how I feel about this topic.
Yeah.
And initially, though, my readers were like, they embraced it. Like, the initial response was like, oh my God, like, we love this is amazing. But when it got out of those circles and when it went into other circles, that's when the trouble sort of came. And I feel like the experience brought this anxiety of people having so much access. Because I remember thousands and thousands and thousands of comments coming in by the hour, and figuring out at a young age how to manage that. And I think that really took that naivety away. And now I'm a lot more careful. And I wouldn't call it self-censorship, but I think that the more that you grow and the more that you realize that this is how many people have access to this, the more that you think, am I ready to share this or not?
Yeah. Your caption, your response to that, the patriarchy is leaking, was so brilliant. And
thank you.
I don't think it occurs to women how much they're being censored and how much being a woman is censored.
Exactly.
I had the worst dinner with a friend the night before last, and the words came out of her mouth, you don't realize how much the world hates women until you are breastfeeding. And I'm like, that is just, no one should ever say that. Those are words that should never come out of a woman's mouth.
I agree.
And it made me so sad. But until it's out there or you engage in some way, and as you say, you stumble on, I posted this picture and actually I realized it was a huge deal.
Yeah.
It actually wasn't okay.
Exactly. Even the patriarchy is leaking. Like, I feel like I didn't even write those words because it was in the heat of the moment when those photos were taken down, and me realizing, like, I realized in that moment how much censorship there is of women, because I had so many groups of women popping up around me that were like, no, you don't understand how wrong this is, because you have all of these other accounts that are able to post like pornography and all these images and all this media that actually objectifies us. And so you need to really do something about it. And I remember in the heat and the passion of that moment, I was like, the patriarchy is leaking, yes.
So good. It's so good. It's so good. You self-published.
I did.
Your work was originally rejected, which is crazy, as so many great writers' work is at the very beginning. Tell me, what does that mean for a writer to be self-published? What is that?
I think traditionally it's not a very good thing. It's kind of saying that, hey, and that's what my professors were like. The first thing I did was go to my professors and say, hey, you know, I write poetry and I think I want to publish a book because my readers are asking for it. What should I do? And I didn't know anyone. I was a student, I was in so much debt. And so I wasn't going to spend an exorbitant amount of money getting it sent anywhere. And my professor said, you know, try magazines, try literary journals and anthologies, and everybody faces a lot of rejection before they get there, so it's fine, let's keep going. And so I took her advice, I took this book, and I started to strip it, and I grouped together pieces of like 5 poems, 3 poems, 7 poems, and I started to send them out. And it just wasn't working. And I kind of understood why, because these anthologies and these journals were about like Canada and the literary landscape, like Canada's where I'm from. And so it was a very specific sort of like themed pieces. And how is poems about like body hair and sexual abuse really gonna fit into all of that? And I self-published the day that I realized that my poetry is, for me, Milk and Honey is one large poem. It's one continuous poem from the front to the back. And I was cheating, wow. You know, like it's like a body of work, but what I was doing was like taking eyelashes and fingertips and limbs and just throwing them and trying to make it work. When really I had to take the responsibility of putting the whole thing together and then being like, here it is. And so everyone's like, this is a bad idea. The moment you self-publish, you know, you're just locking the doors and no one is going to take you seriously. And I thought that that's fine, because no one is taking me seriously anyway. I don't even know these people that aren't even gonna like me. So yeah. Who cares? And so then I did that. And although at the moment everybody told me it was the worst decision I could have made, it's turned out to be the best. And I think timing is one thing. I did it at a time when the internet was really changing the face of publishing. And so it was just the perfect circumstances coming together. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's such a great story. It's so inspiring. And now you have 2.8 million followers or something crazy. Which is, you must wake up in the morning and go, wow. You know, yeah.
I don't believe it's real. I'm 100%. I'm like, there is somebody out there buying these followers for me. And it's also
while I'm asleep.
You know, and it's hard to grasp it's just pixels on the screen. So it comes to life only when it's real life. And like 2 people are sitting together, we're hugging and we're actually having a conversation. That's when I'm like, it takes my breath away. Real. Yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah. How this work has been received in India, in your home country, versus how it's been received. Because, you know, what is mad to me is that your work is considered radical for Western culture. So what blows me away is...
It's crazy that it's radical. I don't feel like it's even remotely radical. Every day I wake up, I'm like, I need to get some edge. Like, let's do this.
But, you know, I mean, it's crazy, but it is. Well, I guess you've already answered the question in a way. Did you realize what you were doing was going to be so disruptive, radical, transgressive? Did you talk to your parents before you started writing poems like these and putting them out? Did you, I mean, were there conversations? None. Wow.
It was, well, the only really conversations I ever had. So I started performing, like doing spoken word and going to like poetry slams and open mics about 9 years ago. And my parents had no understanding of what that meant. And they were very, like, I have immigrant parents, and my mom stays at home with the kids. I have 3 younger siblings, and my dad is a truck driver. So he's like, listen, girl, you need to study 28 hours in the day, 8 days a week. I don't know, you're gonna make it happen, and you're gonna become a doctor, a lawyer, something, because you will not like work your body to the bone like I had to. And so when I would ask them, hey, like drop me off to this thing, I'm going to be performing, in my dad's mind, he's like, what does that even mean? And no, you're not going there. And so because I got such a negative response from them early on, I didn't tell them that I was sharing my work online, or I didn't even tell them I was going to self-publish. And I used to have nightmares when I first started to share my work online, that there was pieces that are about like sexuality and exploring that, and that's not something that we talk about at home. So I would have nightmares that somebody, like some ex-boyfriend, is gonna print this stuff out and just hand it over to them. And luckily that never happened. But I remember that when the book came out, I went home and I was like, I have to tell them. And so I kind of dropped it off. My dad was having breakfast and I was like, here it is. And since that day, everything shifted. It was like in that second, it was a complete 180. And he went from being like, no, you're not doing this weird poetry mic thing, it's a waste of time, to being like, oh, this is a book, I understand this, and how can we help you push it forward?
Wow.
Yeah. My mom still thinks that the sexual pieces are a little bit too much. And she'll be like, to my sister, she'll be like, I'm really happy that I can't really understand everything that you're saying. It's a little bit, but they support me. And I feel very lucky because I know that a lot of other parents coming from the community that I come from wouldn't push their daughter to do what I do. So I feel very blessed to have them.
Yeah. That's amazing. And what do you think gave you the strength, the resilience, the fearlessness? What kind of inspired that in you?
I think my dad, which is so ironic because he's the same guy that was like, stop. But I mean, he's a refugee. And so I hear about the things that he went through back home in India and what he had to do to save his life. And I remember I came over as an immigrant when I was 3.5. But I remember being 5 years old, 7 years old, and being at protests like all over downtown Toronto. And I had no idea what I was saying, but my dad was like, listen, this is what's going on. There's like things called genocides and there's things called this. And we're just going to go up there and we're going to and I was like, what are we doing? And just like this little old me, And I think that sort of spirit really, really empowered me. And then when I grew up and I was a part of like local activist groups and youth groups, he was like, no, like, don't do this. He's like, this is what got me into trouble. Why are you doing this? And I used to laugh because I'm like, I'm your daughter.
Can't have it both ways.
Yeah, exactly. But I think you describe it as like this fearlessness.
Yeah.
I don't even see it like that because it's just my norm. Like seeing your dad and even my mom like deal with things that she had to deal with. It's just a norm in my house. And so I owe it to them. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I guess that's what's so, his existence made his life political. And
exactly.
Yeah, that's just the day to day.
Exactly.
Yeah. I really appreciated the poems where you deconstructed your own misogyny, especially the one about, I apologize to any of the women that I said were pretty before I called them intelligent or brave. And it really resonated because I've had to do so much unpicking of my own stuff. And you've also said that social media is can be a really difficult place to maintain a healthy sense of self and self-esteem. And I'm curious how you navigate those choppy waters and keep sort of finding this well of self-love and love for yourself as a woman, as you are in a world that doesn't support that actively does not support that.
I think it cycles. I grew up, I don't know, for some reason, like I always felt too much and I thought too much and like very low self-esteem, non-existent, and like I was, like there was a point where my self-esteem was so bad that I would have to shower with the lights off or even brush my teeth with the lights off, because if I like had to see my face in the morning, I would disgust myself. And to go from that to then being somebody who's working on Milk and Honey, and my confidence during that time was amazing. I was like, I'm great, all right, cool. And then I thought that would just stay around forever and I'd always be confident and just feel beautiful and not be down on myself all the time. And then suddenly, I don't know how or why, but then it dropped all over again. And I was like, what? And I was like, how can I be sharing this message, but yet waking up every day and criticizing myself? And so like I realized that self-love is like a consistent thing that you have to work towards, and it's always going to happen in cycles. And so it's just like everyday work, and you will never have it all figured out. And you just have to be kind to yourself. And someone said to me once, talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend. And you would never say certain things to your best friend, so why would you say those things to yourself?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Cycles is a great way of putting it, because it's so funny. I've had exactly the same experience where I've been feeling great, and then one thing would get said, and you're like, oh, I'm still there. Yeah. I'm like there again. You know, it's amazing. So that's beautifully put. Yeah, your poem about, you know, how we treat ourselves is how we teach others to love us was also a really beautiful